The blessed day has finally arrived, and after waiting for 2 excruciatingly long years, House of the Dragon Season 2 has given us a brand new opening credit sequence. This new sequence takes us through key moments and rulers in Targaryen history. Unless you're living under a rock, you simply cannot ignore the kind of lasting impact Game of Thrones has left on pop culture and TV, with one of the most memorable elements being its unique opening credits. In the original show, the credits would usually journey across maps of Westeros and Essos, changing each episode to show where the characters would be as the show progresses. While House of the Dragon retained the familiar Game of Thrones theme song, it did give the visuals a fresh twist. In Season 1, the opening credits took us through the history of the Targaryen family, with rivers of blood flowing through a grim, stone-like model of old Valyria. But Season 2 switches things up with a more colorful and lively approach, featuring a whole tapestry that beautifully weaves the history of House Targaryen, slowly illustrating the Targaryen family tree from old Valyria to the latest events in the series, beginning with the doom of Valyria to the ending scene of Season 1. This new sequence highlights important moments in the family's past and the passing of the Iron Throne through generations. Unlike the first season that used gears, blood, and a backdrop of old Valyria to illustrate the Targaryen family tree, the new tapestry in Season 2 is a big improvement, as it is clearer and just as fitting for the show's theme as compared to the first season that emphasized on bloodlines and succession that were dimly lit and had hard-to-read symbols for each Targaryen member. Now, what many of you might have missed is that the entire imagery behind the tapestry first originated from episode 7 of the first season, when Helaena Targaryen speaks a strange prophecy. Hand turns loom, spool of green, spool of black, dragons of flesh weaving dragons of thread. This line cleverly hints at the Dance of the Dragons, which is the name given for the civil war over the royal succession between Aegon II and Rhaenyra. The references to looms, spools, and weaving also suggests how the events of House of the Dragon will eventually be seen as a part of history. This concept was further brought to life in the new Season 2 opening credits. From epic conquest to eras of prosperity, the new title sequence is packed with details from House Targaryen's past, all based on George R.R. Martin's Fire and Blood. So, without wasting any more time, let's dig deep into what each part of this grand tapestry represents and why it's important in the show's overarching narrative. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. The famous dream of Daenerys Targaryen that helped House of Targaryen save themselves. So, right from the first look of the opening sequence, we see blood flowing through the tapestry, which is a direct nod to events of the first season that followed the bloodline quite literally, even giving us a point of view shot from the River of Blood. If you remember, there was a shot where blood was spreading across the white sheets when King Viserys I's first wife, Aemma, was giving birth, thus again symbolizing the extension of the Targaryen bloodline. While initially the few images of the second season's opening credits are a bit unclear, it's still obvious that these events happened before the Targaryen house conquered Westeros. Now, the blood on the tapestry follows how the Targaryen family tree is still growing and can change at any moment, often through violent means. The first scene shows a castle and a city resembling old Valyria right before the Doom, with its giant towers and dragons flying through the sky. We then see a silver-haired Targaryen woman kneeling with her hands near the mouth of a dragon, breathing smoke, while a Targaryen soldier behind her holds a blood-soaked dagger to her back. This Targaryen family member is most possibly the famous Daenerys Targaryen, the dragon dreamer who once predicted the doom of Valyria and warned her father, Aenar Targaryen, to leave Valyria and move the entire house to Westeros. In old Valyria, dragon riders often practiced blood magic, which is probably why the Targaryens have such a strong bond with their dragons. In this scene, while the woman seems to be Daenerys Targaryen, The man behind her could be her brother, husband, and they might be performing some sort of a blood sacrifice to take control of the dragon. Anyways, following Daenerys' prophetic dragon dream, the entire Targaryen family relocated with their dragons and settled on Dragonstone, where they lived for several generations until Aegon's conquest. The tapestry also gives us a glimpse of two Targaryens flying on a dragon and holding each other, which likely depicts House Targaryen's move to Westeros. The Doom of Valyria. Soon after, the opening credits of House of the Dragon Season 2 shows threads slowly forming an image of a castle, followed by a city in flames, being completely destroyed, with dragons dying in the air above. Even the burning city looks a lot like King Viserys' model of Old Valyria from the previous season. So, this most definitely depicts the Doom of Valyria, which Daenerys, the Dreamer, foresaw in her prophetic dragon dream, leading her family's move to Dragonstone. Despite being mocked by other dragon lords, the Targaryens were the only dragon riders to survive the Doom. In the opening credits, you can even spot Dragonstone in the background, and there's also a scene where roots of a tree grow from Daenerys, ultimately illustrating the Doom of Valyria. The event was marked by volcanic eruptions that completely devastated Valyria, killing all the historic dragon-riding family except for House Targaryen, who were lucky enough to leave 12 years earlier. This catastrophic event saw 14 volcanoes erupting simultaneously, destroying Valyria in a massive Pompeii-like fashion and killing most of the dragons, as shown falling from the sky. The roots and swirls we see forming in the tapestry evidently symbolizes the Targaryens' deep connection to Valyria. Daemon and Viserys both mentioned the Doom of Valyria in Season 1, showing that this event remains significant in the family's history and the drama of the HBO prequel. I mean, the Targaryens literally have their roots in the old world, which also signifies through their status as the sole surviving dragon-riding family. The Conquest of Aegon I, the Targaryen who united the Seven Kingdoms. After covering the Doom of Valyria, the new opening credits of House of the Dragon Season 2 move on to Aegon's conquest, which roughly begins a century after the Doom. The tapestry follows Aegon the Conqueror and his sister wives Visenya and Rhaenys, riding their dragons Balerion, Vhagar, and Meraxes in Westeros, thus marking the beginning of Aegon's landing. They landed at the mouth of the Blackwater Rush, where Aegon started building his claim with the Aegon Fort, which we now know as the Red Keep, while the siblings used their dragons to assert control over the nearby houses. After this, Visenya crowned Aegon and Rhaenys declared him as Aegon, first of his name, King of all Westeros, and Shield of his people. While it's not retained in Fire and Blood, in Season 1 of the show, it was revealed that before Aegon's landing and his conquest of Westeros, he had a prophetic dream called Aegon's Song of Ice and Fire. In this dream, Aegon saw the White Walkers invading Westeros and threatening humanity's survival unless a Targaryen ruler on the Iron Throne could unite the realm against them. Of course, this prophecy eventually came true in Game of Thrones, where Daenerys Targaryen and Jon Snow united all of Westeros to defeat the Night King and the White Walkers. Now, below, we also see a ship bearing the crest of House Velaryon, who has always been an old ally of House Targaryen from Old Valyria. The tapestry also references the Field of Fire, which is the most brutal battle during Aegon the Conqueror's conquest. The battle involved the Gardeners and the Lannisters, and you can see the sigils of both houses signified by a hand for the Gardeners and a lion for the Lannisters, which are both seen on shields in the battlefield scene. They had joined forces against the Targaryens in a field of very flammable wheat crop, which caught fire due to the dragon's attacks, resulting in the deaths of most soldiers and the end of the Gardener line. The next scene in the tapestry then goes on to depict the burning of Harrenhal, which is one of the most important events that took place during Aegon's conquest. This event was also mentioned by Tywin Lannister in the second season of Game of Thrones. In the opening credits, we see Balerion and Vhagar breathing fire over many men and soldiers laying charred, dead outside a castle that is engulfed in flames. While the hordes of charred bodies hold up all the casualties, the tapestry actually puts a keen focus on the deceased Harren the Black. Interestingly, the swords of these fallen Iron Men were later used to forge Aegon's Iron Throne at the Aegon Fort. Anyways, after completing the construction of the impenetrable Harren Hall, King Harrenhal and many of his Ironborn followers rebelled against Aegon Targaryen, while many Riverlands houses joined forces with the Targaryens in surrounding Harrenhal. When Aegon warned Harren that his family line would end if he did not submit, Balerion the Black Dread burned the so-called impenetrable castle, its inhabitants and supplies. Naturally, Harrenhal and his sons burned along with the castle, and the face of Harrenhal remained charred for generations, something we evidently see in Game of Thrones timeline. Now, immediately after covering the burning of Harrenhal, the opening credits of the show's newest season then follows three noble houses bending the knee. From whatever we can make out of the sigils, these nobles are King Torrhen Stark, Lord Edmund Tully, and Queen Regent Shara Arryn, pledging their loyalty to King Aegon I Targaryen. Mind you, this were all royalty, which is why the submission of the Vale was indeed one of the final stretches and marked a significant step in Aegon's conquest. But even then, the war was not yet officially over in Targaryen history. The last part of Aegon's conquest is actually the creation of House Targaryen's three-headed dragon sigil. After Houses Stark, Tully, and Arryn pledged loyalty, the tapestry confirmed House Targaryen's reign by weaving Aegon's heraldry. The red three-headed dragon sigil continues to be used by House Targaryen until the time of Daenerys Targaryen's death, with the sigil symbolizing Aegon, Rhaenys, Visenya, and their three dragons. The surprising death of Maegor the Cruel. After covering Aegon's conquest, the opening sequence then moves to follow the image of a Targaryen king with his throat run through with a sword on the Iron Throne. After Aegon I Targaryen's death, his eldest son, Aenys I Targaryen, ascended the Iron Throne. However, Aenys ruled for just 5 years before suddenly passing away, after which his half-brother, Maegor, usurped the throne from Aenys' son, Aegon. Now, Aegon the Conqueror had set a pretty high bar, and his sons didn't quite measure up to fill such large shoes of their father during their rule. Aenys I was seen as indecisive and not very strong, while Maegor I, known as Maegor the Cruel, was a blatant tyrant who led the realm towards a civil war that is represented in the tapestry with two dragons growling at him from opposite sides. I mean, this guy was known for his unjust executions, kinslaying, and, well, tons and tons of burning destruction. Maegor also oversaw the building of the Red Keep, but after it was finished, he had everyone involved in its construction beheaded in order to protect its secrets. Overall, not a great guy, and most definitely not a good king. Even then, Maegor did leave a lasting impression with his dramatic exit, which rightly earned him a place in House of the Dragon's new title sequel. The tapestry in the House of the Dragon depicts King Maegor I Targaryen being found dead on the Iron Throne, with bloodied robes, wrist slashes, and a sword spiked through his neck. In George R.R. Martin's Fire and Blood, the exact cause of Maegor's death remains quite unclear. There are different theories, where some believe that he committed suicide, while others think he was assassinated by his wife Queen Eleanor. But the most obnoxious depiction is that he was somehow killed by the Iron Throne itself, as it did not see him worthy of the throne. However, it does seem to continue a theme of Targaryen kings meeting unfortunate ends on the Iron Throne they rule from. Remember Viserys getting cuts from sitting on the Iron Throne? Maybe deadly furniture is just a common hazard for all Westerosi monarchs. The rule of King Jaehaerys I and Queen Alicent Targaryen over a peaceful Westeros. So, the next look of the opening sequence depicts King Jaehaerys I Targaryen and his sister wife Alicent Targaryen rise to power. While Maegor was known for his cruelty, his successor and nephew Jaehaerys I ironically earned the title of the Conciliator. Both Jaehaerys and his sister wife Alicent were the children of King Aenys I Targaryen, peacefully ruled for an impressive 55 years, the longest reign in Targaryen history, which has rightly earned them a prominent place in the Targaryen tapestry. They had 13 children, but none of them would become the next ruler of the Iron Throne. On the tapestry, few important symbols were woven around Jaehaerys and Alicent to represent the key events during their rule. One symbol is the 7-pointed star that represents the faith of the Seven, which is the main religion of Westeros. Now, there was always a lot of tension between the church and the Targaryens, as the latter always indulged in incest to keep the bloodline pure, which was a concept loathed by the faith of the Seven. But in order to ally himself with the church, King Jaehaerys reconciled with the faith by pledging that the crown would always protect and defend them. Not just that, with their help, he forged the rule of exceptionalism, which declared that incest was a forbidden thing, unless, of course, you're a Targaryen, who consider themselves closer to gods than to men. The sanction of rule united the crown with the faith of the Seven, while serving mutual benefit. We also see a bag of gold next to Jaehaerys and Alysanne, which is a direct symbolism of how the Targaryen king was tasked to rebuild the crown's finances after Aegon's conquest and Maegor's reign. Before King Jaehaerys' reign, the crown owed a lot of money to many banks in the Free Cities. Well, that surely is a story for another day, but Pentos somehow ended up with 3 dragon eggs. King Jaehaerys definitely tried to get them back, but he ended up letting Pentos keep the eggs as long as they cancelled all the debts, settling the deal. Although nobody has ever confirmed it, we believe it's likely that these are the same eggs Daenerys receives on her wedding day as a gift, which later hatches into her 3 dragons. This made Westeros wealthy, and the extra money was later used to build important infrastructure like the King's Road. So while the pot of gold also symbolizes how Westeros prospered during Jaehaerys' reign, the star reflects how Jaehaerys resolved the conflict between the crown and the faith, which began during Aenys Targaryen's reign. It's no wonder they call him the Conciliator. The Great Council, held in 101 AC. After following the rule of Jaehaerys and Alysanne, the House of the Dragon's opening credits revisit events from Season 1. During the end of King Jaehaerys I Targaryen's reign, the opening sequence shows a scene from the Great Council of 101 AC, which we have already seen happening right at the opening scene of the first season. They start with the Great Council of Harrenhal, where Jaehaerys and all the lords of the 7 kingdoms selected his successor from a group of 14 potential heirs. The tapestry weaves old King Jaehaerys, seated with Viserys and Aemma Targaryen on his left, and Rhaenys and Corlys Velaryon on his right. This council decided that Jaehaerys' eldest grandson, Viserys I Targaryen, would succeed him on the Iron Throne instead of his eldest grandchild, Rhaenys. This decision further reinforced the rule against women ruling the Iron Throne, which initially made King Viserys quite hesitant to name Rhaenyra as his heir. It's interesting to think about how things might have been different if the council had chosen Rhaenys instead. The fashion choice that represented the split between the greens and the black. Skipping ahead a few years, the tapestry then directly jumps into the start of the slow brewing conflict between Rhaenyra and Alicent Hightower. After missing most of the wedding celebrations, Alicent dramatically shows up to dominate the field with her infamous green dress moment. She stood at the end of the banquet hall, wearing a striking green gown, making her first power move through fashion at the wedding of Rhaenyra Targaryen and Laenor Velaryon. Given that we always saw Alicent wearing the Targaryen shade of black and red after she became queen, her choice to show up in the house color of the Hightowers was a turning point in the blacks and greens feud amongst the Targaryens, causing a major rift among the heirs of King Viserys I Targaryen. Not just that, if you had keenly noticed, the torches beside her while she entered resembled House Hightower's fiery sigil, while at the other end of the hall stood Rhaenyra, looking equally magnificent in a black dress. The opening sequence also follows a long table divided between the Targaryen blacks and greens, unlike the real version of this event, where there was just one table with both the families sitting across each other as Alicent and Rhaenyra face each other from opposite ends. The tapestry actually weaves Alicent and Rhaenyra to be sitting on opposite sides, different banquet tables on either side of the hall, to show the division of the House of Targaryen in Team Green and Team Black, the Rhaenyra's black group that include Daemon, Rhaenys, Corlys, Lucerys, and Joffrey at the top, and Alicent's green group being Aegon, Aemond, Helaena, Criston, and Otto sitting at the bottom. But in the tapestry, they are depicted through gold instead of green, symbolizing her distance from the rest of her family. This is also a direct reflection of the split within House Targaryen that we further saw intricately unfold in the House of the Dragon Season 1, Episodes 8, 9, and 10. The real version of this power play that we saw in the previous season was depicted to be the origin point for the names of the Greens and the Blacks within the book Fire and Blood. So it's low-key amazing how they took the artistic liberty to hold it up to the audience. The the crowning of Aegon II Targaryen and Rhaenyra Targaryen on their separate thrones. In the most detailed part of the scene that these opening credits have to offer, Viserys I Targaryen's children, Aegon II and Rhaenyra, take their places as the rival rulers of the Seven Kingdoms. While Aegon is crowned as the King of the Iron Throne, Rhaenyra occupies the throne at Dragonstone. Since he was first crowned after usurping the Iron Throne, we see Aegon II sitting on the throne, adorned with a golden dragon sigil on his outfit. Then, the tapestry shifts to Queen Rhaenyra on Dragonstone, wearing her crown and sitting on her throne. Interestingly though, this is the exact same throne we see Daenerys Targaryen sit upon in Game of Thrones Season 7 and 8. Anyway, after this, the opening credits zoom out to reveal the tapestry's images of the Targaryen factions, their dragons, and the various sigils of noble Westerosi houses surrounding them. We see the two rulers are framed by red and gold, symbolizing House Targaryen's colors and their motto, Fire and Blood. We then see two hands stretching out from beneath both of their thrones, sending messages to potential allies. If you focus on the hands, you will see ravens flying out from the green hand under Aegon II, representing Otto Hightower's diplomatic efforts at the start of the war in sending messages to gather more allies. As seen in the Season 2 premiere, this approach is already frustrating the living shit out of the more aggressive King Aegon. In general, Aegon and Otto's green hand with Raven contrast sharply with the black hand and dragons from Rhaenyra's side of the tapestry that acts as a symbol for her children, flying as messengers to ask the greater houses to side with them. But out of the many dragons at Rhaenyra's command, only 3 are shown here. The smaller ones likely represent Prince Lucerys' Arak, which is again a definite reflection of their missions to gather allies in the Season 1 finale to aid their mother in acquiring the Iron Throne. The larger red dragon is probably Daemon's dragon. Rounding out the tapestry, a border of sigils further frames Rhaenyra and Aegon, showing which great houses have declared their allyship for each side. On Team Green, we have major houses Lannister, Baratheon, and Hightower. On Team Black, we see houses Arryn, Stark, Tully, and Beesbury showing their support. Another important point to remember is how Sir Criston Cole murdered Lord Beesbury when he tried to oppose the Hightower, so naturally, his clan would side with the Blacks. At the end, the green hand with a raven stand for diplomacy and politics, while the black hand with a dragon symbolizes strength and willpower. The death of Arrax and Lucerys Velaryon. It's only befitting that the opening sequence of the new season ends with a tragedy that concluded the show's previous season. Yes, we are indeed talking about the heartbreaking death of Rhaenyra's son, Lucerys Velaryon, who was the heir to the Velaryon throne. We see the image of Alicent's second son, Aemond, and his dragon Vhagar killing Prince Lucerys and his dragon Arak, reminding us of the first casualties of the Dance of the Dragons. The tapestry also weaves Vhagar and Aemond near Storm's End, as the dead bodies of Lucerys and Arrax lay strewn about. You can even see the broken wing of Arrax falling into the sea, and considering this was the last major event in the House of the Dragon Season 1's ending, it's fitting to be the final point in Targaryen history woven into the tapestry for Season 2's first opening credits. From here, the now blank tapestry unfolds towards the ominous silhouette of the Iron Throne, and eventually the titles are flashed. Although, if you look underneath the title, the blank tapestry still seems to be weaving something, thus reflecting how the story is still being written. Now, in Game of Thrones, the opening titles were often changed from time to time in order to show us how the characters progressed in the story from a geographical point of view. Maybe we will see something of a similar style unfold in the upcoming opening sequences of Season 2. Who knows? Can you imagine the entire opening credits run for a minute and a half? They basically depicted the entire history of the Targaryen house in this time span. We've witnessed centuries worth of bloody battles and the devastating power of dragons, all unleashed in the name of ruling Westeros. And with a schism between Rhaenyra and Aegon, these events, most of which are just heartbreaking tragedies, do not seem to be stopping anytime soon. As the Targaryen history is still being written, the tapestry is far from done. With that being said, how banger was the first episode? Have you watched it yet? Let us know in the comment box below. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.